Так, так, так. Ну чё, поехали. 42 минуты. При этом, если 42 минуты на скорости 0,9, это будет 46 минут. Привет, я просто человек. 46 минут. Это если без остановок. Но тут точно на часа 2.
Numbers. But actually attributes are a struct of two numbers, a base value and a current value. The base value is sort of the default, so let's say you have 100 health, and the current value is the modified value of your health.
Ну-ка, еще раз.
So I mentioned that attributes are always float values, meaning they are numbers. But actually attributes are a struct of two numbers, a base value and a current value. The base value is sort of the default, so let's say you have 100 health, and the current value is the modified value of your health. So if you have a debuff on you that splits your health in half, so then your base value will be 100, but your current value will be 50 because it's modified by that debuff. But we're gonna go more in details later on. And the second thing you should know is that attributes can only be modified by gameplay effects. We don't just modify an attribute by updating its value. No, we apply an effect that modifies the
Только
value.
эффект
And you'll
может
see that
модифицировать
in this current
атрибут.
tutorial. And finally, attributes are usually part of an attribute set. Now, a set is a collection of attributes that moves together. For example, you can have a defense attribute set that contains armor, shields, or any defense-related attributes. Today, we're going to be creating our basic attribute set that is common for all characters. And that's it. Now, we're ready to start implementing.
Ну, поехали.
Alright, so the first thing we want to do now is create our first basic attribute.
Так, а как мне райдер открыть? А, вот, Open Rider, отлично. Так.
Set. So this is going to be just the basic attributes that all characters have. And for now, it's going to include health, max health, stamina, and max stamina.
Здоровье, максимальное
And we're
здоровье,
going to do this in
стамина,
C++,
максимальная
because right now
стамина.
you can only create attributes in C++. So we're going to put it in our gameplay ability system folder that we created here, which is now no longer there. So this happens sometimes when you create new directories. So you see this characters folder, we actually put it in our gameplay ability system folder, which was under here.
Но у меня оно
And if
здесь.
you open the content browser and go to C++ classes, you'll see that it is there. There is a gameplay ability system folder with characters inside it. So the folder is there, but the IDE is not seeing it. So you will have to go to Tools if this happens to you and say Refresh Rider Project or Visual Studio Project. So this happens often when you create directories that aren't synced with the engine. So you'll just have to do this every now and then. Now if I go back to Rider, there is my gameplay ability system folder with my characters folder inside it. So we're going to create a new folder, a new directory here, and we're going to call it our
Как все тормозит-то?
attributes or
No.
attribute sets, something like that. Okay. And there are multiple ways to create C++ classes. I showed you how to do tools, new C++ class. You can also go into the C++ folder and say new C++ class from here.
У меня все зависло. О, отвисло. Да в смысле? А как? А! Ты еще тут не закончила ничего делать. Ладно.
but I was told how to do two. And there are multiple ways to create C++ classes. I showed you how to do tools, new C++ class. You can also go into the C++ folder and say new C++ class from here. But I will create it directly from the editor. So you can also right click here and say add Unreal class.
Ну-ка, надо тебя свернуть. Может, быстрее заработаешь.
The same search that you'd see in the editor. We're going to go to all classes and search for attribute set. So this is the one we want. And we're going to name it basic attribute set. So again, this is the attribute set that all characters will start out with. And of course, by default, it will create two files for me, the header.h file and the cpp file. And I have source control enabled.
Ладно, откатываемся назад.
There's my gameplay ability system folder with my characters folder inside it. So we're going to create a new folder, a new directory here.
Ну-ка.
And we're going to call it our attributes or attribute sets, something like that. Okay. And there are multiple ways to create C++ classes. I showed you how to do tools, new C++ class. You can also go into the C++ folder and say new C++ class from here. But I will create it directly from the editor. So you can also right click here and say add Unreal class. So this will open the same search that you'd see in the editor. We're going to go to all classes and search for attribute set. So this is the one we want. And we're going to name it basic attribute set. So again, this is an attribute set that all characters will start out with. And of course, by default, it will create two files for me, the header.h file and the cpp file. And I have source control enabled, so it's asking me whether I should add it to Git or not. I will add it to Git.
Два файла создал,
so the first thing we
правда.
want to do is define the attributes that will be in our attribute set. So we're going to create a new public scope. And under it, we're going to add our first attribute. And the type of an attribute is
Свернуть.
attribute data. That's what you want. And we're going to call it
Так, откатываемся назад.
Create two files for me, the header.h file and the cpp file. And I have source control enabled, so it's asking me whether I should add it to Git or not. I will add it to Git. Alright, so the first thing we want to do is define the attributes that will be in our attribute set. So we're going to create a new public scope. And under it, we're going to add our first attribute. And the type of an attribute is f.
Так, ну-ка, подожди. Ну, походу, да, диск тормозит. Блин, вот с Unity таких проблем не было.
Attribute
Ладно,
data.
публик.
That's what you want. And we're gonna call it health. Let's just add a comment here. So this is our health attribute, and then we also want a max health one. Now, they both have to be U properties. They're going to be blueprint read only, and we're going to assign them the category attributes. So this is very important. And one more thing, they're all going to be replicated.
Так, подожди-ка. Health, Max Health. U property. Category attributes. Ну и второго то же самое.
Because we're doing multiplayer as well. So we're going to add this replicated using onRepHealth. I'll explain what this means in a second, but let's also add it for onMaxHealth. And here we just defined our health and max health variables. We're just going to do the same for our stamina. So I'll just copy these and rename all the health variables here. Let me select them all to stamina. All right, so now we have health max to variable. Copy these and rename all the health variables here. Let me select them all to stamina. All right.
Как он так сделал? Но я только по старинке через поиск и замену могу.
So now we have health, max health, stamina, and max stamina. Now this alone is not enough to define our attributes because we need also a macro that comes with the engine called attribute accessors basic. So as of version 5.6, this macro exists called attribute accessors basic. In versions prior to 5.6, you have to create this macro yourself, which is basically copying and pasting these things. So you would copy this if you're using a version prior to Unreal 5.6, and you would have to do this somewhere here. And you shouldn't name it underscore basic. You should just name it attribute accessors and then use it without the basic name. The engine added the basic in case you're using it in a previous project. There wouldn't be a clash in the name. But if you are using 5.6 or greater, you don't need to do this.
Но мне это
and
есть.
you can just use the attribute accessor
Последняя
basic
версия.
just as is. So what is in this attribute accessor? Well,
Так, ну-ка.
these two things. The class of the attribute set that we're in and the name of the variable that we want to operate this macro on. So basically this macro just gives us getters and setters for this health variable. So we can easily call set health, get current health, and we'll see how it works later. But we need this for all of our attributes. So I'm just going to copy and paste it for all of them. Don't forget the semicolon. All right, so it's complaining. There's an error that this attribute is incomplete. That is because we need to include the ability system component.h. Then it will stop complaining. All right, and that's it for the variables. But what about these onRep functions that I mentioned? So we are going to create another public scope here because I like to keep my functions and variables separate. And we're going to define these functions. So onRepHealth, and it takes in one variable, which is an fgameplay attribute data. And it's going to be a reference, and we're going to call it old value. And the whole function can be a const. And this is a very simple function, so we're going to implement it directly in the header file. So basically, this function takes in as input the old value of my health. And what it does here is call another macro called gameplay attribute rep notify. Right, and this macro takes in the class that we're currently in, the current value of our attribute, and this old value. And if you want to see what the macro does, you can press Control and click on it. It will take you to its definition and then see exactly what it does. Or you can also ask GitHub Copilot something like explain this, and then GitHub Copilot will proceed to explain it. This is a very useful tool again for learning, as I mentioned, so please keep using it whenever you have questions in your code. Don't just copy and paste what it tells you, but really try to understand.
Эти все макросы, это какая-то магия.
This will be the function that's going to be used to handle replication for our health variable, but very important, we have to add the U function decorator on top of it. And we are just going to repeat this for all of our variables: health, max health, stamina, and max stamina. Alright, and now we have all of our replication functions. Now, there's still one more function we need to override and implement. This function is called get lifetime replicated.
Ну-ка, подожди, мне это надо сделать. Стамина. Стамина. Макс стамина. Ну все, давай дальше.
Yeah, there we go. So this function defines how we are going to do replication. So how are these values replicated? Because maybe they're not replicated to all clients, maybe they're replicated only to the owning clients, maybe some are replicated under certain conditions. This is the function where we define that. It's going to be a very simple function to implement because we're just going to replicate everything. Great, now we are ready for the implementation. So the implementation is basically adding default values to these attributes and implementing this get lifetime replicated props function. But to add default values, there is also one very important thing we need to define up here as well, which is a constructor. So to define a constructor, we just call the name of the class that we're in, put curly brackets, so we're defining a constructor to implement in our CPP file. Then in our CPP file, let's go here and implement our constructor, the first thing. So we're going to do U ability basic ability attribute set and call in our constructor. And then what we're going to do here is just give default values. So health is equal to 100, max health 100, stamina 100, max stamina 100. So this is how we're going to give default starting values, but then of course we're going to be modifying them later on. And now we need to implement our functions. We don't need to, so GitHub Copilot's suggesting I implement the onRep functions, but we already implemented those in the header. So we need to implement the get lifetime replicated props function. So the first thing we need to do is just call our parent function. So do super get lifetime replicated props. So this is a call to the parent function. And then we need to call the macro do rep lifetime and with the condition notify. So this macro, which requires me to include the Unreal Network header, basically says what is the condition to replicate this variable. So here I have condition none, that means replicate to all clients, owning client and other clients. And the rep notify always just means that it's replicated every time the value is received, whether it's changed or
Так, стоп, rep notify. Always.
Not, but we'll discuss these later. For now, you just need to do the same thing. In addition to replicate, do super get lifetime replicated props. So this is a call to the parent function, and then we need to call the macro do rep lifetime, and with the condition notify. So this macro, which requires me to include the Unreal Network header, basically says what is the condition to replicate this variable. So here I have condition none, that means replicate to all clients, owning client and other clients. And the rep notify always just means that it's replicated every time the value is received, whether it's changed or not. But we'll discuss these later. For now, you just need to do the same thing for all of them. So did the same for max health, stamina, and max stamina as well. And that's it, really. So now what we need to do is add it to our base character so it's available on both our player and our enemy. So to add it, it's simple. It's the same as adding the ability system component. So I'm gonna go here. So right here where I define the ability system component. This class is redundant, by the way, we don't need it. I'm going to define a new class. Here I do need class. So the basic ability attribute set, and it's a reference, and I'm going to call it basic attribute set. And we need to give it a U property. It's going to be visible anywhere and blueprint read only. So we're not going to be able to modify it from blueprints, but that's fine. I'm going to show you how we modify attributes and put it under the ability system component category in our base character. And then just like our ability system component, we need to go to our CPP file and create the sub object for it. So let's do it, well, let's just do it somewhere here. Add the basic attribute set. So what we do is exactly this. Say basic attribute set, create default sub object, give it the type, and then give it a name. So it's complaining here because I didn't include the basic attribute set, so I can actually include it now. Right here, and then that's pretty much it. All right, so now this should all work. And actually include it now. Right here, and then that's pretty much it. All right, so now this should all work, and we should be able to see our attributes in blueprints. So let's restart our project, build it, make sure we don't have any errors, and let's see what's going on. All right, game is starting, no errors, that is excellent. And now I'm in my editor, so if I go to my BP Nexus player here, I should be able to see, well, first of all, I should be able to do something like basic attribute set.
Ну-ка, подожди, у меня ошибка. Live coding is active. Не понял. Exit the editor in game. Так, other compilation error. Ну-ка, попробуй еще раз запустить райдер. У меня вроде уже была такая ошибка. Ядрить проц на 100% грузится. В это время Copilot не доступен в твоей локации. Да господи, чё так грузится жестко? В Винде так не было. Да, ждем-с. Надеюсь, хоть заработает. Тут что, я уже могу работать? Ну-ка. Нет, все равно что-то не хочет. Невозможно построить, пока лайв кодинг актив. Ну ладно, Ctrl-Alt F11. Next live coding. Что это такое? Так, ну ты чё, работаешь или нет? Блин, диск страдает. Депсить. Так что, мне надо выключить его как-нибудь? Оп. Да блин. Или может мне тогда не надо? Может тогда сразу все заработает? Так, что там нужно? Character Base. Эй, почему? Так, стоп.
So to do so here, so if I go to my BP Nexus player here,
А как мне это открыть? А, не туда. Смотрю.
I should be able to see, well, first of all, I should be able to do something like basic attribute sets. So here I can get that, and then I can say something like get health. And I can split the health and see that it has a base and a current value, just like we explained in the beginning of the video. And like basic attribute sets. So here I can get that, and then I can say something like get health. And I can split the health and see that it has a base and a current value, just like we explained in the beginning of the video. And of course, the rest are all there. So stamina, max stamina, and so on. Alright, so we do have this. Of course, I can't say set health because we define this as only in C++, not blueprints. And we're not going to be setting any variables this way. So we're not going to get our attribute set and set an attribute right away. We always use gameplay effects to modify attributes. And we're going to see how we're going to do that.
Все удалил теперь.
But first, let's make sure that our default values are correct. And to do that, we can play the game. And there are a few handy commands that you should know. So So if you press the tilde key on the keyboard, you'll see this command menu pop up, or press it again and it will
Ой.
look like this.
Чуть
There are a
сломалось
few
все.
debugging options that you should know. Oh, and by the way, this is the same as going here and entering a console command. So if I say something like ability system.debug, but first, let's make sure that our default values are correct. And to do that, we can play the game. And
Ну-ка, play the
there are
game.
a few handy commands that you should know. So if you press the tilde key on the
Tilde.
keyboard, you'll see this command menu pop up, or press it again and it will look like this.
Прям
There
как
are a
Quake
few
консоль.
debugging options that you should know. Oh, and by the way, this is the same as going here and entering a console command. So if I say something like ability system.debug, I can
System.
say debug a attribute.
Debug.
Debug attribute. Sorry, not debug dot attribute, but debug attribute, and then give the name. So I can say
Debug attribute.
stamina. Now if I play the game, you see here, stamina is 100, the current is 100, and base is 100. Great. I can do that again. Say ability system dot debug attribute health. Great. So we can see here that our base values are set up correctly.
Так,
Another
стоп,
way to
стоп, стоп, стоп,
open the
стоп.
debug, not attribute, but if I play in bases, you see here the name. So I can say stamina. Now if I play the game, you see here stamina is 100, the current is 100, and base is 100. Great.
Я опять пропустил.
Stamina is stamina. But debug attribute and then give the name. So I can say stamina. Now if I play the game, you see here stamina is 100, the current is 100, and base is 100. Great. I can do that
У меня
again.
что-то нету.
Say ability system dot debug attribute health. Great. So we can see here
Ну-ка,
that
health.
our base values are set up correctly. Another way to open the debugger is by pressing the apostrophe key on the keyboard, which will open up this debugger. So you might recognize this if you've done any AI, and we use this to also debug our AI.
Так.
But on top you see numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. We need 3 for abilities. By default,
А у меня что-то не работает.
but first, let's make sure that our default values are correct. And to do that, we can play the game. And there are a few handy commands that you should know. So if you press the tilde key on the keyboard, you'll see this command menu pop up, or press it again and it will look like this. There are a few debugging options that you should know. Oh, and by the way, this is the same as going here and entering a console command. So if I say something like ability system.debug, I can say debug a attribute. Debug attribute, sorry, not debug dot attribute, but debug attribute, and then give the name. So I can say stamina. Now if I play the game, you see here stamina is 100, the current is 100, and base is 100. Great. I can do that again. Say ability system dot debug attribute health. Great. So we can see here that our base.
Так. Почему у меня нету? Скомпилировано, скомпилировано. Ну-ка, Райдер, если запущу тебя. Нет, Live Coding Active. Так. Unreal 5, Disable, Live Coding. Ладно, нет, что-то не то. Допустим, я тогда запущу не development, а debug. Что будет тогда? Вот я. И ничего не происходит. Не появляется, как у него штука. Так, еще раз Basic. Где этот Attribute Set? Нет, ничего не то. Так, стоп.
Attribute. Now I'm going to define this as only.
Ну да. Basic Attribute Set. А почему нету? Странно. Development. Что вообще происходит? Так, тут все на месте. На месте. Вот, Basic Attribute Set на месте. Допустим, беру вот так и запускаю. Что будет? О, ну что-то запустилось. Так. Ability System. Debug. Attribute. Health. А, вот, все, появилось. Стамина, Макс стамина, Макс Health. Да, это отлично. Окей, так, ладно, дальше тогда.
In C++, not blueprints, and we're not going to be setting any variables this way. So we're not going, and there, say, attribute with apostrophe key on the keyboard, which will open up this debugger. So you might recognize this if, great. So we can see here that our base values are set up correctly. Another way to open the debugger is by pressing the apostrophe key on the keyboard, which will open up this debugger. So you might recognize this if you've done any AI, and we use this to also debug our AI. But on top you see numbers 0, 1, 2, 3, and so on. We need 3 for abilities. By default, this is 3 on the num key, which I don't have a num key, so I'm going to open an on-screen keyboard and press 3. Great, now my abilities are there. So you can see I have the dash ability granted, and all of my attributes, their values are set correctly. So this is another way to debug our abilities, and we're going to be using all of these throughout the series. Now, quick side note, if the apostrophe key doesn't open up or you don't have a numpad, you can edit all of these in your project settings. Just go under engine and find gameplay debugger. And here, the apostrophe key, you can change the activation key to any key you want. And instead of numpads, you can choose 1, 2, 3, and 4. Actually, let me do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, and 0, whatever. We're gonna ignore these. So you can modify these key bindings anytime you want, specific for this project. Excellent. So we verified that our attributes work and our abilities are still working, so I can still dash. Let me just remove this. If I type it again, so if I say debug attribute health again, then it removes it. Right now, I only want to see stamina because we're going to deduct stamina when we dash. So we're going to be creating our first gameplay effect now that is the cost of the dash. And say dashing costs 25 stamina, and let's see how it works and if it actually deducts from our attributes correctly or not.
Так, ну-ка, перерыв пару минут.
Alright, so let's
поехали.
go ahead and create our first gameplay effect, which is going to be in our gameplay ability system folder. I'm going to create a new folder and call it effects. And in here, I'm going to create a new blueprint class and search for gameplay effect. This is the one we want. Select. I'm going to call it GE-cost. So this is the cost
Подожди.
effect.
Так, new blueprint class. Gameplay. Effect. Gameplay effect, execution calculation.
This is the one
Просто.
we want. Select. I'm going to call it GE-cost. So this is the cost of our dash. Now let's
G-cost.
open it up. So gameplay effects are data-only assets. So if I close it and open it up again, it will open in the data-only view. This is what we want. And I'm going to explain just a little bit of the things you see here without going into too much detail, and then we're going to learn more details about the gameplay effects along the way. But just very high level, what you need to know is each gameplay effect can either be instant, infinite, or has duration. Instant is what we want now, so like the dash cost, just instantly modifies a variable, and that's it.
Или с
Has
длительностью.
duration, think of getting poisoned. You get damaged 5 every second for 10 seconds, for example. So you define it like this, has duration. The duration is 10 seconds, and it ticks on the period here every 1 second. So every 1 second you get damaged 5 for a duration of 10 seconds. Something like that. And infinite is the same, it's just, it also has a period that it ticks, but it has no end time. It just goes infinitely until you remove it. This is for like buffs or debuffs and things like that. And it doesn't have to have a period, so it can just be a buff that you always have that doesn't tick, so period would be 0. For now, we just want a basic instant duration policy. Now, the next thing we care about is modifiers here. So this defines, it's an array of modifiers. You define how this gameplay effect will modify an attribute. And it can modify it in different ways, so you can have multiple of them. But we're going to start something basic, just do a single modifier here. So click on this plus icon. And we are going to say the name of the attribute we want to modify. So here it should have all our attributes. We want to modify the stamina attribute. How we want to modify it, we want to add to it. So you notice there's add, multiply, divide, there's some other things, override, add final, add base. We're going to discuss them all, but there is no subtract. That's because we don't subtract, but we add a negative number. So under here, under the magnitude, we add, say, negative 25. So this means that the cost, so we're going to subtract 25 from the stamina. That will be the cost of our dash. And you see here, there are multiple ways to give magnitude. So right now, I just said it's minus 25, but you can also use a curve table here. So depending on the level of the effect, each effect has a level. So it could be level 1 is 25, level 2 is 25 times 2, level 3 is 25 times 3, and you define that in a curve. Or you can use attribute based, which is really, really interesting, because you can say, I have an attribute here called stamina dash cost, for example. So you have an attribute on your character. This is where you get the value from. Right now, we don't have that. There are multiple ways. You can do a custom calculation in C++, which we're going to cover as well in later parts. But for now, we're just interested in the simple, hard-coded negative 25 number. And that's basically it. Now you'll see there's an also gameplay cues section here. I told you there are multiple ways to add gameplay cues. These are the visual effects and sound effects. You can also have gameplay cues associated with an effect. For example, when you get damaged, it automatically applies the gameplay effect for subtracting your health and then plays the cue. We're going to be using that also later, but I just wanted you to know that this is another way of triggering gameplay cues. Great, but that's it. This is our dash cost effect. Now we want to use it in our dash ability. So we're going to open our GA dash.
Ну-ка.
And here, I told you that before there is this costs section. So costs, gameplay effect. So here I can just select my GA-cost. Now, just doing this is not enough. So if I play now and I dash, you'll see stamina is still 100, so nothing changes. Even though I did say it has a cost, but there is one very, very important function called commit ability. Now, commit ability, this is the function that spends resources and applies cooldowns. So back in our class defaults here, it applies the cost gameplay effect, and if we have a cooldown gameplay effect, it also applies that. So it does both. But you can also do them separately. So there is commit cost separate from commit cooldown. Because maybe, for example, I want the cooldown to begin, the stamina cost to be deducted immediately when the ability is activated, but I want the cooldown to start right before the ability ends. So that could be a design decision I'm making. So then I'd split them apart and do it like this. Now if I play, so I have the commit.
Так, ладно. Commit. Получается, commit ability cost. Target self. И commit ability cooldown.
Here. Now if I play, dash, boom, stamina is 75.
Ну-ка. Да, 75, 50, 25, 0. А, я не могу больше дэшить. Закончилась стамина.
Both current and base values changed. Now we're going to go over the differences between current and base later. I know I touched upon them briefly in the intro, but we're going to discuss exactly the differences and why you should care later. But for now, you can treat them as the same. Current and base, they both go down. And now when they go to 0 or any number below 25, I'm pressing the dash key, but it's not dashing because the ability itself checks first if I have enough of the attribute that I defined as a cost. And because I don't have enough stamina, which I defined as the cost here, it won't activate the ability. So this handles costs for us very nicely without us having to do much other than calling commit here. Amazing. And since we're on the topic of costs and cooldowns and effects, why not create our cooldown gameplay effect as well? So let's go to our effects folder, create a new blueprint class of type gameplay effects. And we're going to call this our GE dash cooldown. Now, cooldowns are, I'm just going to close it and open it again. Cooldowns are a special type of gameplay effect. Okay, cooldowns have to be has duration, so that's the duration of the cooldown. So for example, I say 2 seconds here. And again, you can use a curve table. This can be attribute based, custom calculation, everything. But I'm going to for now say it's just 2 seconds. But cooldowns need one very, very important thing. They don't have modifiers. Cooldowns don't modify an attribute. But they need to add a tag. So remember gameplay tags that we discussed last time? Cooldowns need to add a tag saying that this ability is currently on cooldown. You can name this tag however you want, but we're going to name it something specific. So how do gameplay effects add the tags? Well, it's under components here.
Component.
You'll find a component called grant tags to target actors. So there are a bunch of different components. This is the only one we care about right now, but we're going to talk about a lot of them later. So grant tags to target actor. What this does is that it tells you here, okay, what tag do you want to add? So under the add to inherited here, we want to create a cooldown tag. Now, you could create the tag something like gameplay ability, movement, dash, .cooldown, but I want all of the cooldowns under the same tag, because later you can say check if anything is on cooldown, and then you need to check only the name of one tag instead of looping over all your abilities. And we're going to be using this in the UI to say, for example, update the widget if anything is on cooldown or if the cooldown of anything changes. So just click the plus icon and create a cooldown dash, and we're gonna add it under here and add a new tag and then just select it. Perfect. So now we have cooldown dash. So this is all we need right now for our cooldown gameplay effect. So now let's go back to our dash ability under class defaults and add our cooldown gameplay effect. And we call commit cooldown here, so it should work fine. And we have it set to 2 seconds. So let me play. I'm gonna dash, trying to dash again, not working, and after 2 seconds it works. But I'm gonna show you, I'm gonna validate that it's working correctly by using the debugger. So press the apostrophe key, and I'm gonna do it in slow motion to show you. I want you to look under the owned tags and gameplay effects sections. So I'm going to dash. First, you'll see that the active gameplay queue starts, and then you have the cooldown.dash tag, and you have the ge-cooldown effect active. So tag under validate, and I'm going to do it in slow motion to show you. I want you to look under the owned tags and gameplay effects sections. So I'm going to dash. First, you'll see that the active gameplay queue starts, and then you have the cooldown.dash tag, and you have the ge-cooldown effect active. So this has duration, so it stays on for 10 seconds, and the cooldown.dash tag stays on for 2 seconds, sorry, not 10 seconds, and the cooldown dash as well. And if I'm trying to dash in the meantime, I'm trying now, nothing's happening until it's removed, then I can dash again. Perfect. So nothing happening, removed, I can dash. Cooldown is working correctly. And when stamina reaches 0, I can't dash again, even if it's not on cooldown. Now, a very quick side note. We have this ability instanced per actor, not instanced per execution. If I do instance per execution, and you have the cooldown at the end of the ability, there's something really important that we need to talk about. So, now if I dash, I have to wait 2 seconds, I can't dash again. But if I try to dash during the dash, like this, I can spam the dash, as you can see. Not sure if you saw it, but I'm going to spam the dash. And I just dashed 4 times within the same dash. This is because instant per execution allows you to try and activate the ability while it's still active. So if you do have instance per execution and you want to prevent activating the ability while another instance of it is still active, then you have to use this tag. So block abilities with tag. We're going to be using this a lot, but I wanted to touch upon it because this section is one of the most powerful things of the gameplay ability system. It allows you to define how abilities interact with each other. So for example, I can say this ability blocks any abilities with the tag gameplay ability.movement.dash. So that means it blocks itself. Or I can just say it blocks any movement ability.
Дай продработать.
or I can say it blocks any gameplay ability whatsoever. So while you're dashing, you can't do anything else. And this is technically what you want. You probably don't want to be able to do anything else while you dash. So now I can't spam it anymore. So I'm spamming, not working, not working, not working. And now it's on cooldown, so I have to wait 2 seconds. Great. So this works as intended. Now I'm gonna keep this blocks abilities with tags, but I'm gonna change it back to instance per actor, not execution. I just wanted to explain this really quick, and we're gonna be using, again, a lot of these tags in the future. I know I keep saying that, but we do want to start simple and do more advanced things as the series advances. Alright, okay, so now we have costs, we have cooldowns, we can dash until our stamina is over, but we don't have a way to regenerate stamina. So I'm going to create a gameplay effect that auto-regens stamina, and we're going to see how we do this periodic stamina regeneration that you see in most games. So this is pretty cool. So let's start by creating a new gameplay effect for auto-regen. So I'm gonna right-click Blueprint Class, Gameplay Effect, I have caps lock on, and we're gonna call it GE Status, because it's basically a status effect, and call it Stamina Regen. Alright, open it up, close it and open it again. I like it in this view better, so closing and opening it gives me this view. Now, Stamina Regen is going to be an infinite status effect. So as long as you have this effect on you, you're going to be regenerating stamina. And it's going to have a period, it ticks. So how often do you regenerate stamina? Let's say I want it 30 times a second. So I do 1 over 30. So 30 times a second, it will modify the stamina value. So we need a modifier here. And say modify the stamina attribute. We're going to say add to base, that's fine. And we're going to add a very small number. So we're doing this, remember, 30 times a second. So let's say add 0.2 stamina. Alright, that's it, simple effect. Now we just need to add it to our player and remove it when stamina is full. So you don't want this always on the player. So let's see the logic of that. We're going to go to our Nexus player function, and the first thing we need to know is when do we apply this effect on the player? So I showed you so far applying effects through these menus, through the costs and cooldowns, but I haven't showed you how you apply effect manually through blueprints. So the first thing we need to answer again is when do we apply it? Well, you probably want stamina to start regenerating a short period of time after stamina has been reduced. So I use a dash ability, dash is over, stamina is deducted, maybe wait a second and then start regenerating. That's what you see in most games, right? Stamina goes down, waits a second or waits a certain amount, and then stamina starts going back up again. So that means we need to detect, I'm just gonna move this debug tab here. That means we need to detect when stamina has changed. So how do we do that? Well, there's a very handy function that comes with gas called wait for attribute changed. This can be called on any actor that does have attributes. So I'm gonna say, tell me when the stamina attribute changed. And when it does change, it gives me a new value and an old value. So I'm just going to create a custom event here. I'm going to call it handle stamina changed. And I'm going to give it 2 inputs as well. A new value, which is a float, and an old value as well, which is also a float.
Так, подожди. New value. Float. Old value. Тоже float.
And I'm just going to call this function here. So when stamina changed, I'm going to call handle stamina changed and just pass in my new. old values.
New value, old value.
Well, this name...
Так, атрибут. Атрибут стамина.
Did not change. Refresh node. Old value. Okay. So what do we want to do when the stamina changes? Well, first we want to check, did it increase or decrease? So I'll do a branch and check, is the new value less than the old value? So if it's true, then stamina has decreased. If it's false, branch and check, is the new value less than? The old value. So if it's true, then stamina has decreased. If it's false, then stamina has increased or maybe stayed the same. It probably didn't stay the same, otherwise this wouldn't have been called. So this is increased and this is, this is decreased and this is increased. So let's start simple. If stamina decreased, we want to apply the gameplay effect. So we do that by getting our ability system component and calling apply gameplay effect to self. Not spec, but just apply gameplay effect to self. So this asks us which gameplay effect we want to apply. We're going to say the stamina regen, and we're going to keep everything as default. So no level and no context. So then this will add the stamina regen to our character, and we're going to start regenerating stamina. But when do we remove it? So this is infinite, remember? So we need to remove it when stamina is full. So this will start regenerating stamina, which will also call handle stamina changed. But the new value in this case will be more than the old value when we're regenerating. So this branch will be triggered. So we want to check here again, have we reached the maximum value? So we can do that by checking, is this new value greater than or equal, so has it reached or exceeded the max stamina? How do we get max stamina? Well, it's an attribute that we have in the basic attribute set.
New value.
There are multiple ways to get attributes, but since we're in a class that does have the basic attribute set on it, we're just going to get our basic attribute set and say get max stamina. And we're going to split it and check the current value. So if the new value exceeded or reached the max stamina current value, that means that we have regenerated full stamina, so then we want to remove this gameplay effect. So we do that again by getting our ability system component, and we're going to say remove active effect. Now there are a bunch of ways to remove an effect. We can say remove active effect that grants a specific tag. You can say remove an active effect that has a specific tag, or you can say just remove active gameplay effect with a handle. The handle is what's returned here, so I can plug this in. But I'm not going to do that. So we can create a variable out of this and say remove it with this handle, but I don't want to remove it this way. I want to remove by tag. So remove effect granted tags. So this is the effect that grants a tag to an actor. And the reason I want to do this is because I want, when stamina regen is applied to an actor, I want it to give a tag, so then I can always query, is this actor regenerating stamina or not, and then easily also query it by the tag. So going back to our status, to our effect for stamina regen, just like we did with our cooldown, remember the cooldown added the cooldown tag, we are going to add a component here as well, which is grant tags to target actor, and we're going to create our first status effect tag. So we're going to create a new tag. I'm going to call it status. So we're just going to have all the status effects that we have. .stamina.regen. Alright, add it to our default tags and select it here. Perfect. So now I can go back to my player and say remove any effect with the tag that applies the tag status.stamina or regen. And we know it's only this one, so it will be removed. Great, let's test this out.
Ну-ка. Let's test this out.
I didn't do, there's still more to do, but let's test out this basic implementation now. So, stamina is at...
Ладно, ну ща посмотрим. О, стоп, почему не работает? Handle stamina changed. Так.
100, and we're gonna split it.
Ну-ка, чё не так сделал? Стоп, мне такая же, как у него было. Вот так вот. Ну-ка, refresh notes. Все, работаешь теперь? Окей. Ладно. Так, и... О! Останавливается. Все равно как-то могу 2 раза прокликать стамину. Почему-то. Окей.
So now I can go back to my player and apply. There's still at 100, I dash, and look at that. It's regenerating until it reaches around 100. We need to discuss clamping to make it exactly 100, but clamping we'll do later and we're going to discuss in a later part. But this seems to work, but there is no delay, and it can also stack. So right now I keep dashing. Not sure if you noticed, but if I dash while the effect is active, let me show you here. So we say if the effect, if stamina decreases, apply the effect. But what if it's already increasing? So stamina is regenerating, and then I use stamina during regeneration. So that...
Да нет, там не в этом дело. Это вообще со стаминой не связано. То есть стамина быстро регенится, вон. Если прям тыкаю быстро Shift, я могу 2 дэша сделать. Чё-то тут не то. Ну-ка еще раз, как там все работает? Кулдаун. Вот, кулдаун геймплей эффект. Может, из-за этого, из-за Instant Spirit Execution. А, или... У него же тут просто стоит вот так вот. Ну-ка. Ну да, теперь я не могу. Да, все нормально.
Then this branch will be triggered, and then I apply another stack of the gameplay effect. So then I have multiple stacks of stamina regen, and then it regens at multiple times the speed. Now you can prevent this. You can go to stamina here, and under stacking, you can say aggregate by source. So each source has their own stack, and you can say limit the stack count to 1. Maybe this is something you want to do for stamina regen because you don't want to have multiple stamina regens. Maybe you do, I don't know. I will do this. This will prevent stacking. So if I dash multiple times, so while it's regenerating, I dash again, it's still the same speed. So if you notice, it's still going around 0.2, but yeah, it's not. Last time it was multiple times the speed. So this is working, but there is no delay before the dash. So I can't, there's no delay before adding the effect. So I can't do a delay here. So let's say wait 1 second and then apply the gameplay effect. This is gonna work the first time. So the first time I dash, waits a second, and then applies it. But if I dash while it's already there, it doesn't wait a second. So I'm dashing, it's gonna keep regenerating. So that's why before the delay, we have to remove also the active effect. So whether it's there or not, I'm just gonna put this here. So when stamina decreases, so again, stamina has decreased, remove any regen effect, whether it's there or not, wait a second, and then apply it again. Now it should work. It's at 100, I dash, 75, it's regenerating, I dash, it waits a second, and then starts again. That's exactly what we want. Perfect. Alright, and that wraps up part 3. You have just learned how attributes work and created a basic attribute set shared between all characters. You've learned how gameplay effects work and created multiple types of effects. Instant effects for costs, duration effects for cooldowns, and infinite effects for stamina regen. You also learned how to use the gas debugging tools to see your values change in real time. Now, in part 4, we're bringing everything we've done together
он с ним не сразу
and
регенится.
visualizing it on screen with UI widgets. We're going to build a proper HUD with health bar, stamina bar, and even cooldown indicators for our active abilities. And by the end, you will see your character's resources update in real time. And this is when it really starts to feel like a game. Oh, and finally, before I go, I have an assignment for you. And if you're a Patreon member, send me your assignment and I will grade it for you. The assignment is to create a new attribute set with at least 1 attribute and add it to your base character. And also create 2 new gameplay effects, 1 for damaging a character and 1 for healing a character. This means subtracting from the health attribute and adding to the health attribute. And then test them out by applying them when you press a random button on the keyboard. Alright, and that's it. I really hope you stick around for the next one. It's going to be really fun and packed with learnings and very satisfying to see everything come together on screen. If you've enjoyed this video, please consider giving a like and subscribe. It really helped the channel. And if you're not a Patreon member, consider checking out what I have to offer. There are a ton of benefits on my Patreon, and it would really help out the channel.
Ладно. Вот эту штуку с новым атрибьютом и с уроном и дамагом я сделаю в следующий раз. Так, ну, пожалуй, на сегодня все.